Good evening. I am Purnima and our team Garima, Navjinder and Gagandeep. Today we are going to present on topic defining trust boundaries between vendors and clients. However, the topic has a broader range, so we confined ourselves to defining trust boundaries between vendors and clients in outsourcing. Today we will take you over a brief introduction to outsourcing and trust, which is followed by defining needs for trust boundaries, pre-assessment for building trust, and establishing trust. We also dealt with how to balance formal controls and trust. Therefore, challenges, overcoming challenges, and benefits completes the topic, and facts gives the factual figures for the topic. What is outsourcing? To talk about outsourcing, this denotes continuous procurement of services from a third party, making use of highly integrated processes, organization models, and information services. To present it in a simple words, outsourcing is an arrangement in which one company provides service for the other company. Major reasons for outsourcing are reduced costs, focus on core, improve quality, and increase speed to market. What is trust? To talk about trust in a general sense, the act of placing yourself in the vulnerable position of relying on others to treat you in a fair, open, and honest way. To be more specific to context of outsourcing, trust is important consideration prior to adoption of outsourcing options and subsequently during the management of the outsourcing relationship. Needs for defining trust boundaries. Nowadays, intense global competition requires companies to reposition themselves in value networks and build more sustainable and long-term relationships with their outsourcing partners. However, trust is a critical issue in contemporary outsourcing arrangements. Needs for establishing a trust comes into picture when you expect open communication, decision making, and cooperation and satisfaction in decision making process. The establishment of trust is of importance in the working relationship as it leads to risk taking. In my opinion, most importantly, the alignment of trust and formal controls should be balanced, which can be achieved by defining trust boundaries. Trust control balance. Complexity of relationship between trust and formal controls by focusing on the importance of achieving an appropriate balance between the two. Formal controls are very crucial dimensions of any business relationship that ties business partners with obligations, reduce any chance of opportunism from either sides. Specify a work context of the project and what is more help to regulate and monitor the ongoing process of an organizational activity. Yet, trust as an alternative source of relationships has been widely used to offset a negative and very often narrowed implication of formal controls. The below figure depicts a generic process of achieving a balance between trust and controls in the outsourced environment. The proposed framework is based on the understanding that trust and control should be both equal components, yet independent dimensions of the relationship. In the outsourcing arrangement, a current level of controls, that is, a contract and enforced formal contracts, should be complemented with the current level of trust between the sides within their arrangement. For example, the prior history of the business relationships between the partners will form a positive attitude toward the partner to start building new relationships based on trust, specifically trust. Moreover, the positive role of trust building in the relationship development and the role of formal controls impacts on the project coordination. Thank you. Now, my teammate Gagandeep Kaur gives a detailed explanation of drawbacks of undefined boundaries, and thank you.
Thank you, Purnima, for explaining the needs of trust in vendor and client relationship. So we saw that trust is the most important factor for successfully managing the outsourcing relationship. Trust can be established in a very simple ways, like being familiar and friendly with other people. Even ability to communicate in client's native language and being familiar with his or her culture can provide the biggest advantages in achieving the initial trust. For example, Japanese clients are insistent on working in their own languages. So that's why companies who have engineers or software engineers fluent in their own Japanese language are well placed to develop their new business in Japan. So what if the boundaries of trust are not defined? If the boundaries of trust is not established between the client and vendor, there will be expectation mismatch throughout the contract, as they might have not shared the exact information due to lack of trust. If there will be no trust, there will be no security, and there will be loss of confidentiality and authority as well. So the risk factor in this kind of collaboration will be very high. So what are the factors that are really important for establishing that trust? Face-to-face communication. According to me, the face-to-face communication meetings are the key drivers of your outsourcing success, as it minimizes the uncertainty where culturally diverse people from all parts of the world are involved. In contract management, expectation should be common from both the sides, either from vendor side or the client. Otherwise, we will not expect the outcome should be same. To enhance the communication and face-to-face meetings, visit and efforts should be from both the sides. Like the client and vendor should visit their countries for face-to-face meetings. And knowledge dissemination is as important as other factors. By sharing the knowledge, the performance can be improved. Knowledge can either be shared from the past experience or from the knowledge shared from customers or the previous contracts. So this time the flaws can be removed. Management of contracts here defines that every expectation, terms and conditions should be clearly defined, maintained and documented, as no one likes the surprises in between the project. So above all of these, it is really necessary to have a pre-assessment of both the client and the vendor. So we can say to have a due diligence as well. Assessment can be either of ability or integrity. Ability defines that does the vendor is really able to do work that he is promising, or to maintain the integrity, knowledge transparency is must. And knowledge can only be transparent, information can only be shared if there is trust. So trust is really important. Thank you. Now my teammate Navjinda will explain the challenges and how to overcome these challenges in building up the trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Gagandeep. Now we'll be talking about the challenges faced in the trust building in a client-vendor relationship. Building trust is not an easy task. There are many challenges faced when it comes to building it. The first challenge is the communication. Communication acts as a barrier if there is a physical distance. If client and vendor are not co-located, conveying their ideas and collaboration becomes very difficult. So we can say meeting someone and putting a face to the person you are talking to helps a lot. Imagine yourself talking to someone every now and then for the very little details whom you have never met, or taking orders from the same person can be very annoying and cumbersome. Sometimes this physical distance becomes mental distance as well. According to a case study we referred, which is the trust in client-vendor relation, in interviews with vendor employees, it was found that they feel more closer to the client after meeting face to face, and in fact the client side employees felt closer too. Another one explains about how his role required a lot of client interaction which was done virtually before, but after his visit to his client side, how he feels now free to call in for any issues at any time. He is no more worried about what they're gonna think about him. So putting a face to communication is very important. Another significant challenge in maintaining trust between client and vendor is in most of the time because the client side employees believe that vendor employees lack important knowledge about the client's business and the impact technological changes and failures have on business. In the same case study, one of the client employees further explained that even in the instance of giant knowledge transfer, there still remains a gap of what vendors have to do and how they will execute it. So in some cases, clients has to be repeatedly consulted on the issues they expect the vendor will be able to figure out themselves. This leads to the fragile trust bond. Then comes the lack of transparency. Lack of transparency also constitutes a challenge when client vendor are not nearby. But in contrast, if they are working in a close physical proximity, clients can always make sure things are done their way. Otherwise, things could be hidden or forgotten by vendors and sometimes by clients too. It usually happens when vendors don't know how to solve them or no one wants to take the responsibility. Another dimension of lack of transparency could be related to faceless communication, where some of the client's employees are unsure who are working on the task and what was the previous achievement of a particular employee. And the last one is the cultural differences. This is usually observed in the outsourced projects and where multi-faith people are working on similar tasks. They fail to understand the culture and beliefs or even the workplace culture that differ with different regions. Now we'll be talking about overcoming these challenges. For healthy client-vendor relationship, physical distances should not result in mental distances. Face-to-face communication and meetings should be highly encouraged and for getting to know each other well. In case of outsourced team working at distant location, use of technology in the form of virtual communication should be used for interacting with each other. Someone from both client and vendor should be available at all times to understand and resolve issues of technical and domain-specific nature. Then comes acknowledging criticality of the issues. For example, if anyone sends mail from client to vendors in an outsourced vendor team in India, supposedly, they will not be understanding the exact criticality of that issue, how the client is facing it in on-site location. So if the website is down, the offshore team in India will consider it a low criticality. So it needs to be communicated that the entire Europe is using the website, and if it is not working, the credibility of the client is going to be loosened in the market. So at all stages, little details need to be communicated and the vendor employee should be trained to identify the criticality of even little issues from the client. We can establish social and technical connections. Making the client and vendor connecting socially and technically will be beneficial in overcoming these challenges. Secure knowledge exchange culture should be practiced. Client sensitive data should be protected by vendors at all costs and at all times. This will form the trust within the client and vendors. Now my teammate Garima will be taking the control and discussing the other facts and figures. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Namjinder, for handing me over for explaining the benefits of trust and maintaining outsourcing relationships. In outsourcing, relationship establishing trust are supposed to provide for several advantages. That is, mitigating optimistic behavior. It is very important to have a proper behavior while dealing with the client and vendor relationship, because if they will have trust, then they'll have a proper timeline and all the contracts will be done in a proper way. The second one is developing team cohesion. Trust is a firm's reliance on the integrity, ability and character of team members and confidence placed in them. It creates shared positive and confident expectations of the behavior of a team as a whole. This emerges from the interactions among team members. Trust contributes to the ability of team members to collaborate, which in turn leads to easier adaptation to complexity and change. Supporting the creation of mutual shared goals. Trust increases team member satisfaction and motivation. The third point is facilitating knowledge, resource and assets transfer. Trust fosters interpersonal contact and mutual ties and thus enables knowledge sharing and cooperation among the team members. And last but not the least is facilitating achieving of goals. In total, 83% of the companies are working in virtual teams consider that trust helps them to achieve their goals in an easier and efficient way. After having a look at the benefits of trust, now let's look at some facts and figures. Here, as you can see in the graph, we have mentioned a lot of trust achieving factors. There are two types of trust factors. One are which are defined in the initial stage and the other one which are the maintaining factors. The trust achieving factors are investments, people background, personal visits, reputation, experience and references. As shown in the graph, the highest priority is given to the references by all the clients. The vendor gets the contract only if they have a strong reference. However, people background and investments are at the lower level of just 4. Moreover, experience is considered equally important as references as shown in the graph. Also, reputation and personal visits are at an average state. These all the data are mentioned here by an empirical investigation done for the software companies. Out of 18 cases, reference is the highest priority. As you have seen, these are the trust achieving factors. Now let's have a look at the trust maintaining factors. As you can see in the graph as well, there are some trust maintaining factors mentioned. First is performance, confidentiality, understanding, consistency, communication, commitment, process, honesty, demonstrability and transparency. Confidentiality and performance are given the lowest among the all. But transparency over here is considered to at the peak position. For maintaining trust between client and vendor, transparency is very important. However, demonstrability, honesty and processes are considered at the same level. It is very important that the client and vendor are honest in their relationship, and the process should go according to the decision made in the initial stage, so that the contracts goes in a proper manner and the goal is achieved in the given time frame. Also, commitment, communication, consistency and understanding, all these 4 points are at an average segment. So over here in this graph, we have considered 18 cases as well, and out of 18, 10 have responded that transparency is the most important thing. So now I'll hand to Purnima for the conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Garima. I would like to conclude this presentation by just giving a brief about the topic. Finally, it says clarity and honesty are the foundation for trust between client and vendor, and trust leads to mutual benefits and long-term relationship in outsourcing. Thank you.